The video is why Minecraft Factions is dead. The thing is, I never played Factions. Let's just play the video.
Factions is, or rather was, the best game mode Minecraft has ever had, and it's not just me that feels this way. Hundreds of millions of Minecraft players worldwide have played
Everybody
Factions
who's
before on
older
various servers
and played
like the
Minecraft
Archon,
servers,
Cosmic PvP, or
They
Minecraft.
all say Factions was amazing, and they compare Donut SMP to Factions. But I've never really played Factions. I played Factions a long time ago when I was like, I don't even know how old I was. I was probably in like 3rd grade, however old 3rd graders are, like 9, maybe 10. But I played it just to play survival and for the economy. I never played it for rating bases and having claims and everything. So I don't really know much about Factions, and I don't know why it died.
The game mode was at its peak in 2014 through 2015 in terms of popularity, and since then it's slowly dropped off. Now, we can't deny the fact that Minecraft Factions is dead, but what we can do is ask why. If you were to look up Minecraft Factions today, like I've done so many times already, and scroll past some of the server lists, you'll find a lot of threads of people trying to figure out exactly what happened. But still to this day, nobody knows the exact reason why the game mode died out. I started playing Factions at the age of 9 and have been pretty involved with the Factions community ever since, which is why I feel credible to explain exactly what happened. But for the story to make sense, I have to take you all back to January of 2023 when me and my friend Angelo began our mission to revive Factions and bring it back to the glory days when the game mode was still thriving. Our plan was to cut out all the complicated features and rules to make the game mode simple and fun like it once was, rather than being competitive.
I feel like Factions are really complicated, and the only way you get into it is if you watch a lot of content before you start playing, or if you have friends that like already know what they're doing.
Point where
I feel like that's why like regular survival servers are more popular, because it's just so much easier to join and just to enjoy playing because you already understand everything.
felt like a job. When we first released the server, we had around 40 players that were very interested in the game mode, and after having our season open for a few weeks, the complaints started coming in. Players began complaining that our game mode was too grindy, and they were asking for a lot of the modern features, not to mention the player base quickly became extremely polarized. Some players wanted raiding to be easier, while others wanted it to be a lot harder. Some players wanted PvP to be the main focus of the economy, while smaller factions who didn't quite have the manpower to compete in the war zone wanted something equally as rewarding to grind. And I could name hundreds of examples, but the cherry on top is that most factions would just quit after getting raided once because they didn't have the drive to rebuild and get revenge on the faction who raided them. This caused me to really take a wide look at what exactly happened with factions. Why was it so fun back in the day, and why does it seem like players are constantly arguing about the meta and how the server should be? And I found out that it really just comes down to these three things. Factions meta has been changing. When factions first came out, it was still new, players were still experimenting, they were still figuring out what the best TNT cannons were or the best base defenses to use. Because it was a new game mode and a lot of new players were joining and experimenting and trying it out, there were a lot of noobs that would just make easy to raid underground bases, or they would just run out into the war zone with nothing on. And
honestly, I don't really think that makes sense, because if there were new players that were joining back in the day, wouldn't there be new players who are still joining now and figuring out new things now? Like, I feel like if Factions was a really good game mode, it would have lived till this day
players
and still be popular, because new players will come in and continue to join the server.
There's a much wider range of skill diversity within the player base. You'd have the top richest players that would be making giant farms and trying to just collect as much money as they can. Then you'd have the noobs that just make an underground box, or the people that are strictly there to PvP. And the third reason is that back then players would just play factions to have fun and do whatever they wanted instead of worrying about competition. Whereas nowadays servers that have factions top,
that's because the factions I guess died. Like no new players are joining, I guess. And because of that, there's everyone who is still left in the comm is competitive. I don't think, and I think that's because it died. Like, I think there's another reason why it died. I feel like what he's explaining is what happened because it died, not why it died.
Turn into a strict competition where you're not allowed to just go out and PvP for the fun of it. I remember when I was growing up on factions, the main event was to go Warp Desert and fight against other factions, or do some organized 1v1s, or even trap whoever is trying to attack you. But now you're not going to see that as much. People only gear up to PvP if there's a King of the Hill going on, or an outpost, or some sort of major event. Not to mention, most faction servers stayed on version 1.8, which will be 10 years old come September. This caused the game mode to miss out on a lot of new players that might be joining because they were on an older version. And instead of the big faction servers like Cosmic PvP or the the Archon trying to become player friendly again and update to the newest version. What they did instead was just either sell their server or shut down completely. I think the core of Factions is very obvious. It's
I guess
raiding,
the
it's
top,
PvP, and
the top
it's base
servers
building. But if you
closed?
get into the logistics of trying to balance out all these features and revert them
How
to
did Factions even get big in the first place? Was it a server that got massive and then YouTubers made videos on the server, or did YouTubers make the servers big? Like, I don't even know anything about Factions at all.
when times were simpler, it gets extremely technical and difficult to achieve. If Factions is truly going to make a comeback, it really needs to be looked at under a new light completely. It needs to be a game mode that new players can join, play, and learn intuitively without having to read through a 5-page rulebook. There shouldn't be rules like buffer limits or faction size caps, because that should all be enforced in-game through natural consequences. Because without new players being able to learn the Factions game mode and actually come into the
YouTubers
community,
made the Factions big? Okay, so maybe the problem was that YouTubers just moved on from Factions and decided to make content on other stuff. Maybe that's why no more new players joined and it became so competitive.
it's just going to continue on a downward slope until it's fully dead with 0 players whatsoever. I still own my OG faction server Mineage, and I'm not planning on giving up anytime soon. So if you have any ideas for how I can bring back OG factions, if you'd like to get involved or just play the server, make sure to join the Mineage Discord.